Hello and welcome to a Lughnasadh card reading. A little technical issue. I did a live recording of the reading on Instagram, or at least I thought I did, and seemingly I did it live, but it didn't save it and record it. So I have decided to try a new approach. Take two. So we shall do the recording of the cards now and go through the reading of the three cards I picked for the month of August, and also in honour of Lughnasadh for the month of August and harvest time. So I thought that was interesting. So let's get to it and see what was interesting cards. So I'm delighted to share them with you. So let's see how it goes. So we have the Eight of Swords in the position one, which will be for the preparation, up to date, what's been happening, what's been going on to prepare us to bring us up to Lughnasadh. The Chariot, which will be our current time, what's happening now on Lughnasadh and around this time. And then the future for the month of August, what's happening for us. Really interesting. So let's get to it. So the Eight of Swords. What's been happening? What's the preparation? So the Eight, always considered to be obstacles and blocks, but it's never considered to be a positive or negative. It's very neutral card, not positive, not negative, must be neutral. But what it is a sense of overcoming obstacles and barriers and blocks. So what it can feel like is that a decision has been made, something's been decided upon, you have made a choice or a decision, or something has happened that you are going to make a movement on, but you're feeling stuck. Something's stopping you, something is holding back. If you feel like it's that stop start. So what it is that things have to be overcome. And the reason you're not moving forward is because what needs to be overcome, these obstacles and blocks, are things that definitely need to be let go and need to be dealt with. And not dealt with necessarily in that, oh, here we go, we have to sit down and go through things, but it's more that it can be, maybe you can look at things in a different way, maybe look at them from a different perspective, or maybe take a different path. Because whatever's going on, there's a block or an obstacle in the path that you're currently travelling along or dealing with a problem. So it's that adage of trying to solve a problem with the same mindset that created the problem. So maybe it is a time to look at it from a different point of view, take a different path, take a different direction, and then that will help you overcome these obstacles or blocks. And they maybe just need a different point of view, different outlook, looked at in a different way. Maybe you have been seeing them as negative, and maybe it's not to see them necessarily as positive. Maybe you see them as things, as challenges. Maybe they're also experiences, or can also feel quite a heavy feeling to it. So a sense of there's old stuff here that's heavy and really dragging and holding it. It's that feeling of like chains or stuck energy. So it's maybe a sense of it's definitely inner work. So it's nothing on the external. It's something to do with yourself and inner wisdom and inner intuition. But it's really a sword. So it's to do with your thoughts. It's to do with the mental aspect, your mind, maybe logic and facts. That maybe you need to take yourself out of your heart and feeling it, and maybe to look at it from the point of view of logic. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe you need to step out of the heart element and the emotional side of it, and maybe that's what's been happening. And maybe you need to look at it from a standpoint of stepping out of it and having the overview and disconnecting. That kind of, maybe you're absorbing them and absorbing energies and absorbing emotions, where you need to observe instead of absorb. So it's that kind of feeling to it. But what it feels like is that it's a sense of old habits, old beliefs, maybe old responsibilities that are no longer there, but you feel drawn to them, or you necessarily you're doing them automatically. They're habits that things have got into a habit that maybe it's time to reassess these old habits, old ways of doing things. Maybe it's time to just take a step, pause, and look at things from that side of logic, pros and cons, remove the emotion from it. And is it the way to be doing things? Is it something that's just been there and done? And the other cards that come up will bring this into focus as well. So definitely up until now, maybe you've been doing things in the same old way, same way of doing things, it's just tradition or habit or comfort factor, or just it's just been that way. And maybe now it's time to look at it a different way. Are you taking on something and responsibility and doing it the old way where it doesn't need to be? Are there responsibilities that they've been doing for a long time? Maybe they came up, maybe it's family, maybe internally. So yeah, something to look at from that perspective. On this element as well, from the 8 perspective, from the Kabbalah side, the 8th path is called the Hod, Hod. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies if not to any Hebrew. And this is all about fluctuation and change. So from an everyday point of view, it's all about the logic in the head. So it ties in again, like with the swords. And this is where there's a lot of synchronicity you'll see in this. So it's weighing up things. And from a spiritual perspective, from the Kabbalah, it's about obtaining knowledge, learning, and expertise. So maybe what it is these old ways and old things have just been knowledge gaining and understanding, and maybe it's now used that knowledge and understanding and look at different ways, learn what can be changed. Often the traditional interpretation is all about logic and blocks and a fortress of old habits and old ways, and that maybe it's time to have a quick escape to remove these things. So it can be seen like a wall, and that the block is like this old block, and it'll definitely, once I show you once we've looked at the tower and the future, it makes sense actually when we sync this in together, because what it can be shown as is the blocks and obstacles are just this wall around and the heaviness, and that it feels like if you just address one or two things, they all are built up around the same source. So it's that kind of thing. If you boil it down to there's one underlying source, one or two issues, and what it is if you knock out those two, just remove those one or two blocks, the whole wall is going to fall down. So there is just one or two fears, obstacles, an underlying source, and once they're gone, the rest of that old belief system is just going to fall away and be overcome. So that kind of ties into later in it. We're also looking at it from the element of the swords, and the swords are considered to be element of air. So again, it's all about logic and the mind, and also maybe there's that feeling, with air spirits like butterflies, that can remind us to enjoy our happiness. So maybe things are being taken too seriously. Maybe that's what the old ways is the old habits, too serious in the mind, too logic, that maybe it just needs to step aside and just have a bit of fun with it. Enjoy the happiness of it. Clear out the cobwebs and let it all go. Definitely feels like there's a breakthrough on the horizon, and there is also this kind of, not so much warning, but consideration of, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting to be rescued? Is that what the thing is? Is that what the external aspect to this is? That you're expecting the resolution or the blocks or the overcoming of these obstacles to come from outside? What are you waiting on? Who are you waiting on? You need to have your own strength within, and it's time to rescue yourself. Why can't you rescue yourself? There's a strong will there to be able to do it. So that's what it feels like for that one. So really interesting. And from a numerology point of view, the numbers 8 is all about strength. So the strength of will, the ability to overcome. It's a quiet determination. And So that is interesting as it ties in as well. So, shall we move on to the present time? What's happening now around this energy at the moment? What action can be taken? What is going on at the moment? So, it's the Chariot. So, it's a major arcana. It's the number 7. So, we move the 8 to the 7. So, from a 7 point of view, from a numerology point of view, it's about movement. It's card in action. It's also about advancement and progression, embarking on a new achievement. It's a progression, but it's speedy progression. So there's a lot of movement, moving ahead strongly. So if you're embarking on something or a new project, and it might necessarily to do with work or anything else, could be an achievement, something you're setting out to do, something you've thought about, it means you're going in the right direction. It's a very creative card as well. And on the major arcana journey, it's all about confronting life. So experience, a mission, movement, kind of like a time of change, seeking answers. Again, like the swords, it's to do with internal answers and travel. So it's an internal journey of exploration rather than necessarily an external one. There could be travel, but definitely. So for the Chariot, the path is the path of formation by experience. So it's all about experiences, whether they be good or bad, and how they mold us into our unique self. And all about the continuing, ever-changing aspect that we're always continually to live, and every time as we continue to live and experience life, there's always new pathways, new situations, always challenges that give us a fresh outlook. So the word is change, but there's an element to be mindful of the word change, and that it has an intention and a purpose. So when we talk about change, there should be a purpose behind it and set an intention, rather than it just being an ends to a means. Kind of things like you can make a change where you change your external environment, you change location, you change jobs, or you change your situation. But if you haven't dealt with the situation, if you haven't dealt with the obstacles and the kind of from the aspect of this one, of the internal issues, so it's to do with if you don't change the inner aspects, if you haven't dealt with the blockages, haven't dealt with the obstacles, they will move with you. So what happens is the external environment might have changed, but the dramas and the characters and the traits and the issues are still there, and they come with you. So they're still lingering, and therefore there has to be dealt with before you make the change. So the point of having a purpose and an intention to move, rather than just moving for the sake of moving and making a change. So that was what comes with it. So also as well with the Chariot, it's an interesting aspect because there's two elements to it. I feel like there's two elements that come out of it. So as you can see, the Chariot, it can have an aspect of question for yourself. Think about it, and what it comes up for you and your intuition. What does it tell you? Is the Chariot leaving to journey through the unknown, out to unknown lands? Is it on its adventures? Is it heading out of the city, heading off for uncharted territory, for adventure, for knowledge, to look for understanding? And is it going into the future? Is it going into the past? And also, the other element to the Chariot is it returning from its adventures? Is it returning in triumph and victory, as they would in Roman times, when they would come into the city on their chariots, these Roman warriors and generals coming in triumph in a procession into the city, all their glory and triumph, and parading through, returning joyful, returning triumphant, returning with the knowledge and the understanding. So returning with the experience, the knowledge and understanding to overcome whatever it is, and have overcome it with victory and triumph. So two elements. Are we venturing out, or are we returning from our venture? So something to think about, to tune in for your own intuition. Which way does it flow for you? Because it seems to can go in either way. So depending on your own experience of what's happening in your life, that could be the way it goes for the month of August. So what is happening now at the moment? What is? So then we move on to the Tower. Okay, always considered to be a bit of a catch your breath moment. One of those ones in the tarot that just much like death, and it can be seen as a negative, but it is often considered in readings, especially when we consider all the ones that have gone the cards before it, and talking about obstacles and barriers, that the Tower can be seen like a prison or a cage, and therefore this destruction that has to happen is a liberation and a freedom, removing the bindings, whatever it is that's holding those obstacles, and from the Eight of Swords. So whatever is going on there, and it has been going on there, with those obstacles and barriers and blocks, in order to do it, rather than it could change, it has to have a complete transformation. So they have to be knocked down completely. As I kind of mentioned before, these kind of walls that just needs one or two little weak spots or foundation blocks to be removed, and the whole thing will come tumbling down. So it is, although it looks doesn't look the most interesting cards, the most positive looking of cards, it can be seen that way. So it's like a lot of things, it's your perspective and your point of view. So it's destruction, and it's kind of like the cycle of life. It's the cycle of anything, and not necessarily a physical life, but in the cycle of things that go on in life. It's birth, living, destruction, birth, death, rebirth. So it's the aspect of birth, living your life. You're born, you live your life, living through an experience. It could be a cycle of an experience where the experience begins, it happens, you go through it. It could be a challenge, and it'll come out the other side, a different person, a transformation, and it's a rebirth, a chance for rebuilding, a rebirth. And sometimes this is what happens. The things have to be torn down completely in order to be rebuilt again. The foundations might be solid, but it may have been built crooked, it may be something, a glitch in it, or as I said, also has that feeling that it was made too rigid, too confining. There's a sense of being bound up and constricted, and that kind of element to it, and therefore it's got too restricted as a rigidity to it. So it feels like it was kind of too rigid, too what's the other aspect to it, so it feels that way, and restricted. That's what I kind of looking for. So it's rigid and restrictive. It's kind of very, in a way, connected to the warning that comes sometimes with the Chariot, and that is that be careful of tunnel vision and blinkers, because sometimes with the Chariot, if we're talking about progression and advancement, it can be a speedy aspect, so it can happen really, really quickly. So what you need to be careful of is that you're not blinded by a one direction, and therefore it's seen as keep the overview, keep the the bigger picture, and don't get blinded into one narrow little spot down, and restricted with your viewpoint, and get torn up in just the one outlook and the one element. So that tunnel vision and the blinkers, just be careful of that with the Chariot. And that could come with this, and that maybe it's going too much in a rigidity, going down one path, not seeing the bigger picture, so therefore it has to be pushed and destroyed and start again. But sometimes starting again isn't a bad thing. It can be the aspect of that it needs to be completely rehauled and rethink, and that maybe it's just time for a new outlook, to an old way. As I said, continuing with this feel of going along. And what also is interesting is that the The 27th path, which this represents of the tower, is considered to be the path where everything that is, it's a combination of the 7 and the 8th path. So if we look at the chariot, is the number 7 card, and the 8 of swords brings you to this. So it combines the 7 and 8 paths, the chariot and the 8 of swords, and talks about constantly things being constantly torn down so that it can be reformed in the light of something new, new events, new experiences, new revelations, and it's a positive transformation. I said again, it's not just going to be a change, it's a transformation, and it has to happen this way, because it's just a slight change isn't going to make a difference. In order for it to be a different outlook, different new path, it has to be a transformation. But sometimes it can be seen as a releasing of an old and a clearing out of the foundations in order to rebuild stronger foundations. Something like a relationship or a situation that is gained through experience. Maybe it's an experience of pain or problems, a challenging experience. And what happens sometimes with these setbacks and challenging experiences, they can be a blessing in disguise. When we're living through them, it certainly doesn't feel like that. But that hindsight, when we look back at certain things in our life that we were disappointed in, didn't happen, things broke down, relationships didn't work out, things went astray, we can see them later on in life as being blessings in disguise. And that maybe the universe has our back and is supporting us, but has the bigger picture and has a better outlook and a better understanding for us. So needs to just kind of drag us out sometimes of something, because we're come stagnant in it, we're comfortable, we're stuck in a certain kind of situation, in our little comfort zones, and that we need to be drawn out of it, because we have challenges, we have a life to live, there's enjoyment out there, there's joyfulness. Maybe that's it, we're just stuck in the seriousness, this feeling of responsibilities. And yeah, no, we're not saying to throw all the responsibilities out, but it's maybe to reassess. Are you taking on too much responsibilities? That's what's holding you back. So interesting. It also brings to mind that Garth Brooks song about unanswered prayers, and that's the vision of sometimes our prayers go unanswered because they're not for us, and that there's something better out there for us. So that is the thing and feel of it. So interesting. Feel to August. Looking in the cards might feel a bit weird and a lot of talking about obstacles and barriers, but it's talking about overcoming them. It's talking about overcoming challenges for movement. Then is the progression and the chariot, and are we moving or are we coming back? Have we gone out? Maybe we've done it all at the one time. It's that speed where you've gone out, we've had the experience, we've had the revelation, we've gained the knowledge, and we're back triumphant in victory, and we have it all in our heads. And then we can make the change, we can make the transformation based on the knowledge and understanding we have obtained. So for the month of August, transformation. Be careful what you wish for. Maybe they're unanswered prayers. So that is the feeling for Lughnasadh, the cards for Lughnasadh, and the cards for the month of August, and they're the 3 cards pulls. That's the energy that feels like, that's what's come up for me. So maybe looking at the cards, you might have a different interpretation. Like everything, it's all into your own intuition. This is just the feeling from my perspective and the coming together of the 3 and the what feels right for me. So it could be my reading, it could be your reading, it could be a general reading for the universe, what's happening in the world. It can be a number of things. So what does it feel like for you? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to make a comment, give me feedback and understanding. As I said, it was a live so video earlier. I think thankfully thank you to Danny, because he tuned in live there, and I hope I came through clear and understanding. So now we shall try it this way of recording video and then posting it on Instagram and see how that works, and we shall try for another live one at another time, maybe around the new moon. I was mentioning also that it's interesting, this is my 89th post, so the last post was 88. The 8th of August is coming up, so the 8th of the 8th, which is the Lionsgate energy. So each year on the 8th of the 8th, there's always an interesting time as the Lionsgate opens and the energy flows in to see what's happening in the world. And it's a new moon, so maybe something new is happening with the energy. So it'll be an interesting time. New moon, Lionsgate, 8th of the 8th, interesting energy. So I will draw cards for that time as well, which will be really a nice time. So actually it's this day week, so definitely an interesting time. Enjoy. Blessings for Lughnasadh, Lughnasadh, Gra, August Sulas, Bannacht. Have a great festival. Enjoy the month of August. It's harvest time, it's celebration, it's enjoyment, and definitely the cards may look like they're not saying that, but for me and the feeling of the cards is positive outlook. It's the letting go of the old. It's hard sometimes, and now is change, and so is hard stepping out of our routines and our old ways. But we need a challenge, and we need to move on, and we will move on. And there's light at the end of the tunnel. There is a good prospects on the horizon. August is a good month. It's a joyful month. It's harvest time. We're celebrating. Let's go and celebrate and have some joy in our lives. We've needed it, and it's definitely after what we've gone through in the world in general and for everybody. And not dismissing what went on and not dismissing what's happened. Like most people, and for some people, it's been a tough time. And yes, so not making light of it. I, like some people, have lost loved ones this time, so it's definitely not that feel to it, but it's a time of celebration, and we're allowed, and maybe that's it, that we're allowed to celebrate even through the hard times. That is allowed. Okay, blessings and Bannacht.